reel accordingly. Usually with a new reel that comes in a box, the manufacturer will include an operating instruction booklet. This will describe how to set up a reel for right or left-hand retrieve. Most conventional reels that we use for freshwater fishing, might be called a basic trout reel, are called single action reels. This means that they have no gears to magnify the retrieval rate. Usually they have a pawl drag system or a click and pawl. The reel shown here has two pawls. Some have just one. Many of these types of reels are switched from one retrieve to another by merely reversing the position of the two pawls. On a larger reel meant for bigger fish, such as this large arbor reel, these are often also called wide arbor reels, they most likely have a disc drag. A disc drag is characterized by a disc or plate on the frame side of the reel, and these provide more restraint on a revolving spool, making them more suitable for larger fish. Many large arbor reels switch the retrieve by flopping the center disc on the frame. Once you've set up your reel with the proper retrieve, you may then begin to assemble your tackle. First thing we're going to do is to take a look at the components that make up the complete fly line, as we collectively call it. And this would consist of the backing and the fly line, and then the leader. And the first thing we'll do is affix the backing to the reel using the arbor knot. It's generally easier to do this if you first remove the spool from the reel frame. With your reel, you should receive information about how much backing to use with any given type of fly line that you've chosen for your reel. And once this is established, then you can affix the backing to the arbor or the center post of the reel spool using this simple two-step knot. It's essentially a slip knot with a stopper in the end that keeps it from slipping away from the reel spool once it's cinched down. And the last step on the process is to trim the tag end off of the backing and then snug it down against the reel. After you've tied the backing to the reel spool, replace it on the frame and wind the correct length of backing onto the reel. The next step is to tie the front end of the backing to the back end of the fly line using the nailless knot. Normally with a new fly line, particularly weight forward types that have a definite front and back end, there will be a gold foil tab or sticker on one end that says this end of backing or this end of reel. In the absence of this tag, you should take the outermost end of the fly line as it comes off of the original coil and assume that this is the back end that goes toward the reel first. If you're rigging up a double taper fly line in that both ends of these lines are the same, it doesn't matter which end goes to the reel first. After you've made 6 or 8 wraps, and as you begin to tighten, twist the tag end of this backing with your right hand as you pull on the opposing ends. And then you can begin to move it together, and as the last step, you want to slide it down toward the end of the fly line as close as you can to minimize the amount of waste that you would have to cut off. And the final step is to trim off the tag end of the backing, and then should there be any little amount left on the fly line, trim that as well. And this would be the completion of the nailless knot that affixes the backing to the fly line. After you've attached the backing to the fly line, you can then wind the rest of the line onto the reel. Fix the reel to the butt section of your rod. Be sure the backing is coming forward above the line guard. To facilitate this process and avoid potential problems with the fly line, enlist the help of a partner to assist you. Have them hold the rod tip and fly line spool as you wind the line onto the reel. It's your responsibility to evenly wind the line across the face of the reel spool. Then remove the reel spool from the frame and the fly line identifying sticker from the case and fix it to the inside back of the reel spool. This will allow you to identify what fly line is on that spool in the future. The next step in the assembly process is to affix the leader butt to the tip or front end of the fly line using the nail knot. In this case, we're tying a 12-inch piece of red monofilament to the front of the fly line to create a permanent leader butt. This permanent piece will have a loop tied in the other end that will allow us to easily add or change leaders to our fly line. Its bright visible color serves as a modest strike indicator. Another benefit of the permanent butt approach is that it avoids having to tie the dreaded nail knot each time a new leader is needed. Another route to a permanent butt is to start with a regular full-length leader attached to your line, and when you need to change it for the first time, simply cut it back to about 12 inches and tie a loop. The nail knot is one of the more difficult knots to tie. You'll need to practice this knot, and we suggest you use a larger, more pliable material other than monofilament, such as parachute cord or limp nylon. There are knot tools available to assist in tying this and other knots. Although they are helpful to some, we suggest that you first learn how to tie these knots without any tools and thereafter decide if a tool is necessary for you. As you begin to tighten this knot, be sure to slide it down toward the front tip of the fly line to avoid having to cut off the fly line taper and avoid this waste. Then moisten the knot in your mouth, cinch it down. The final steps would be to trim the monofilament tag end and the front end of the fly line. This is the completion of the nail knot fixing the leader butt to the front of the fly line. Assuming you're setting up a permanent leader butt, this step involves using the perfection loop knot to create a loop in the end of the monofilament butt material. Be sure to start by wrapping the first turn behind the line to create a loop. This first loop should be roughly the size of the final loop you want to end up with. As with most of these knots, you will learn to tie it most easily by using some material other than monofilament to practice. To tighten it, insert the jaws of your forceps through the loop while pulling on the running portion of the monofilament. The last step is to trim the tag end. This will give you a permanent loop using the perfection loop knot. Once we've created a loop in our permanent leader butt, we need to connect a leader to it. We do this using the hand-shaped loop connection. Also known as a loop-to-loop connection, this isn't really a knot. Rather, it's a means to interconnect two materials together, each of which has a loop in the end. The loop on the leader is inserted through the loop of the permanent leader butt. By doubling the running portion of the leader and pulling it all the way through the loop, we don't have to chase down the actual end of the leader. It's just simpler and easier. Then simply form these two loops together in handshake fashion, if you will. This type of connection is very popular for quickly changing leaders and fly lines.